You can be the biggest Conor McGregor fan in the world, but you cannot make excuses for this whatsoever. He has now been found guilty. Now, originally, I was going to do a particular story regarding Netflix being sued by a customer. Okay, because obviously the stream was so bad that there were a lot of complaints, and perhaps it may have made the experience for many people out there horrendous in trying to watch the Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson fight. But nonetheless, I think the bigger news right now is Conor McGregor and his guilty verdict, which, by the way, I got to remind you, is a civil trial, not a criminal trial. Still, nonetheless, the old saying goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Look at this picture right here. This is the latest picture that was taken from Conor McGregor after he was found guilty, which, by the way, he now has to pay this woman a certain amount of money. Whatever amount that is, we don't know. That is up to the court, and that is for the deciding factor of the parties involved. Nonetheless, let's take a look at the news clip of Conor McGregor right now. Okay, let's take a look at the news that is going on right now with Conor McGregor. So obviously, he has been found guilty. Woman who accused Conor McGregor wins civil case, has been found that the mixed martial artist Conor McGregor assaulted the woman involved. The Guardian: McGregor assaulted woman at a Dublin hotel, jury finds. Conor McGregor's fiance supports him in the court after the Eshuel assault civil trial. I mean, wow. Okay, these are serious. The news clips that are coming out with Conor McGregor right now. This is not looking good for Conor McGregor whatsoever. Obviously, the Michael Chandler fight was supposed to happen. That never happened. And for whatever reason, we were thinking maybe it's an injury. Conor McGregor cited that he had a foot injury. Now that all of this has come about, we don't know if this is true or not. You also got to remember, right? The whole entire game here is public relations. And as a result of public relations, you got to wonder to yourself, right? Was Conor McGregor and his team behind the scenes sort of swiped all of this under the rug? I'm talking about the injury. I'm talking about the talk of all of these things going on, because the gruesome details that were presented to us back in 2019, 2020, and then leading on to this civil trial right now in 2024, we were hearing snippets of it, right? Like if you knew anybody in Ireland and they've heard some local news or something to the effect of, well, an Irish superstar was involved in such and such, you got to think to yourself, right? All of that was swept under the rug after a couple of months within that time frame. And then all of a sudden, the only thing that brought this whole attention once again was the trial. Undeniably, it had to have been taken a certain attention towards. And that is what we have going on with Conor McGregor right now. So, what we're going to do in a current moment of time, let us take a look at some of the news articles that are going on about Conor McGregor. Let's take a look at Yahoo Sports, right? Since Ariel Hawani is now part of this entire team. Conor McGregor loses Dublin SA civil case, found liable of assaulting Nikita Hand. So Conor McGregor has lost his civil case in Dublin. The High Court has awarded damages of 248,000 pounds. Okay, so that's against McGregor on Friday after ruling that she was SA'd by the former UFC champion in a Dublin hotel in December 2018. Okay, so that is what we have going on with this case right now. Okay, furthermore, let's read on to this right here. So she's 35, raped by McGregor and another man named James Lawrence in a penthouse. Okay, so these are the details. Damages of 188,000. and with an additional 60,000 pounds also added, making it a total of 248,000. Okay, so McGregor was accompanied by the court by fiance D. Okay, so this is where it gets interesting, right? What is she thinking about all of this, right? Because here's one thing you got to understand. I think what Conor McGregor has going on is sort of in agreement with his partner as to say, hey, you know what? This is what's going to happen. This is what's going on. Or maybe uh well, look, there's a lot of speculations we can make about this, right? There's the aspect of fear, there is the aspect of uh fear of loss in let's say financial stability. There are all these things that are sort of in the play. And then also you got to understand Connor is not necessarily tied with D in any kind of way. And I think there has to be some sort of ploy and strategy behind that regarding the fact that, hey, you know what? If all else fails or if all this fails, I don't want none of my assets to go elsewhere. And I think that's really what is going on here because when you look at this picture, right? I got to be honest with you, this is not one of Conor McGregor's best moments. And if you're a Conor McGregor hater, my goodness, you're going to look at this and say to yourself, man, you're going to be rejoicing of everything that you've seen unfold right now. The downfall of Conor McGregor, the fact that he's not able to get his fight, the fact that all of this is sort of unraveling before our very eyes as to wonder if even the foot injury was even real in the first place, or maybe it was a public relations ploy in order to get us distracted from the reality of what is going on in Ireland. Because you got to remember, sometimes the news in Ireland doesn't travel that fast over here in the United States. Let me tell you about some content that I've been really listening to regarding these particular topics at hand with Conor McGregor and Irish crime and the Irish mob, etc., and all that, right? The podcast called Crime World, which I believe is an Irish podcast, and they cover all of these Irish mobsters and gangsters that I never heard of in my entire life. But with that in mind, I started thinking to myself, you know what, man? This is something that's not being broadcasted in America. And obviously, it's not within close proximity of anybody's care. If, let's say, you're from Chicago, or if you're from New York, or if you're from Los Angeles, or if you're from Sacramento, it's not a concern of yours, but it is interesting. However, Conor McGregor is not just an Irish superstar, he is an international superstar. And whatever happens with him and whatever he does is going to be very intriguing for a lot of people. But yet, this particular news did not get much coverage because I think there's a lot of restriction in Irish media court. And I think that people only wanted to cover it right until the end when everything was all said and done. And this is what we got right now. Conor McGregor in his most worst times ever. And particularly the possibility of his twilighted career. Okay, like Conor McGregor is nearly in the end right now. Look, you got to think, what did Dana White say when he said, hey, you know what? Conor McGregor is not going to come back until late next year. Late next year, what are we talking about? So you're talking about 2025 of December, literally going into 2026 of January. That's what we're talking about. And how old will Conor be then? 37. Can you imagine all the time that has been wasted from then on, right? But you got to remember, at one point, Conor McGregor was a different man. He wasn't this man. And we're going to analyze real quick before we get back into that article how he got to this position today. Now, you got to remember, recency bias is very prevalent in mixed martial arts, if not all of professional sports and combat sports in general. So now Conor McGregor's coming off of a loss. Okay, that is the current moment of time that we understand him to be. The guy that was halted off a stretcher after Dustin Poirier basically busted his leg, yet in defiance Conor McGregor went on to still talk smack to Dustin Poirier. And you guys who've seen the last fight know exactly what I'm talking about and some of the language and some of the things that Conor McGregor has said. Either way, during that time, that's not really the first time that Conor McGregor has taken a loss in his illustrious career. Now, going back to the Diaz fight, right? The rematches that they've had going on. The first fight where he had lost to Diaz, at, believe it was UFC 196. So what does he do? He goes and rematches him in UFC 202. What are we watching right here? This is the open workout of Conor McGregor getting ready for Nate Diaz. Now, why am I playing this? I'm showing you this because I'm telling you that at one point, Conor McGregor was a very headstrong fighter in terms of, you know what, I've taken a loss. I'm going to own up to it. I'm going to get this rematch, use my privilege that the UFC has given me, and somehow go in there and avenge my loss against Nate Diaz. And so he did exactly that. As soon as he was able to avenge his loss, he then started to build some confidence. And that confidence built into being a double champ because obviously after the Nate Diaz UFC 202 fight, he won. Sorry about that. Had a little mic issue there. So I was after UFC 202, he went on to UFC 205 and defeated Eddie Alvarez, which again put Conor McGregor in a completely different stratosphere. So what happened after that fight? Well, I got to tell you, what happened after that fight was that he went on to fight Floyd Money Mayweather. And I got to be honest with you, that particular fight is exactly what led him to this particular situation today. And you're probably asking, how is it that Conor McGregor got led into this situation? For one, the Floyd money, I think, really ruined him because it was just fast money all coming at once to something that is really unusual for mixed martial artists. Because you got to remember, there's a certain economy that a mixed martial artist live by in different eras. Conor McGregor right now is in almost billionaire mode, right? So as a result of being almost a billionaire or even a billionaire in the current moment of time, it's a different set of living standards that a mixed martial artist has now been living under because you got to remember back in the days, dudes were just happy living in gyms, getting fights whenever they needed to, fighting for the glory, and maybe even just having a side job just to survive, right? Dudes were happy with that. But now Conor McGregor has raised a certain level of flamboyance and extravagance in mixed martial arts that, quite frankly, could be very highly unattainable to a lot of the people that are in the underclass of this particular sport. Not to get off tangent, I knew this one member of Team Alpha Male, right? I believe his name was Angelo Benuelos, I think, is or Barrios. Angelo, no. Yeah. I think I forgot his last name, but I've trained with him and then I've worked with him at some place. I don't want to mention where. But anyways, this kid got into he got into a shootout with the police and died, right? I mean, this is a kid who was living a life of crime while also fighting at the same time. And then when he was in a police chase, he just basically had to off himself, unalive himself with a shotgun, right? And that was the end of him. He had to be cremated after. But yeah, I remember one of his favorite fighters was obviously Conor McGregor. He loved the idea that Conor was this extravagant, flamboyant, very materialistic type of fighter. And so he sort of follows suit. And I think, in my humble opinion, it may have influenced him to get into a life of crime in order to live up to those extravagance. But anyways, that's, the impact that Conor McGregor has in the game today. But understand, he wasn't always this person, right? All of this led up to all of that from the Floyd fight. And then after that, the Khabib fight. I'll be honest with you about this, right? I think that when you mess with a Muslim who's very righteous, I think eventually you're going to suffer a certain level of curse behind that. But that's just my humble opinion about that matter. But yeah, moving on. Let's move on to the article, okay? Because we're going to take a look at the award that Miss Hand had received here. So £248,000. Okay, let's try and equivalent that to the US dollar. What would that be? USA dollar. So this is what she was awarded, essentially, right here. This is, yeah, the award that she got for that particular case. And yeah. So moving on. Moving on to the article here. All right. So McGregor was accompanied by D for the first time during a court trial in the 2-week proceeding. So this was her first time in the court, right? And again, I don't know if that was a strategy to try and make it seem like he's innocent, although you can't take that out of the equation. That is a strategy that lawyers are going to try to use. So several of Conor McGregor's family members were also present at the high court. Reports from the court state that the jury took 6 hours and 10 minutes to come to a decision. Okay. So leaving the court 5 p.m. local time, McGregor declined to make a comment as he was sworn by awaiting media. The case was a civil case, not a criminal case, meaning that the assault is deemed a civil wrong and, okay, so entitled to compensation. However, McGregor will not face criminal sanctions. So that's important to understand here, okay? These are not criminal sanctions by any degree, right? So outside the high court, Hand gave a statement to the media thanking her legal team, the Rape Crisis Center, and her family and her friends. So she also says here, what does she say right here? This is what she reads out. To all the victims of SAI, hope my story is a reminder that no matter how afraid you might be, speak up and have a voice and keep on fighting for justice. I know this has not impacted this. I know this has not impacted my life, my daughter's life, my family, and my friends tremendously. It is something that I will never forget for the rest of my life. Yeah, because you've made a lot of wrong decisions and this and that. But, anyways, now that the justice has been served, I now can try and move on and look forward to the future with my friends and family. I thought he was going to unalive me. Hand testified that she and her friend were picked up by McGregor late December 9th following a Christmas party with the understanding that they were heading to another party after Lawrence joined a group. Hand alleged that Conor shared a bag of cocaine with her and her friend back in the car, then traveled alongside McGregor's security team and others to a penthouse suite at the Beacon Hotel. Now, Hand told the court that McGregor isolated her in a bedroom and, okay, blah, blah, blah. I was trying to talk to him and tell me relax, pin me down. Okay, Hand's lawyer. McGregor, okay, an arm lock. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Dr. Kane, who worked in the Dublin Rotunda's hospital for the trauma unit on December 9th, told the court that he met Hand a day after he had arrived to the hospital via ambulance after her mother called emergency services. Kane testified that he witnessed Hand shaking and crying. Bruising was present in multiple locations across hand and body. He had me by the neck. He stopped me from breathing a few times. I thought he was going to unalive me, Kane said. So Kane said he examined Hand and, okay, so this is basically what won the case right here was this. This is literally what won the case right here was that notion. And again, by the end of the day, Conor McGregor was found guilty in a civil court, not in a criminal court. But does that dismiss anything that we know of Conor McGregor by any capacity? The answer is no. It doesn't dismiss anything like that. But here's one thing that we can take from this, right? In my humble opinion, I think he dodged this one. Okay. And why did I say that he dodged this one? Well, understand that Conor McGregor did not face a criminal justice here. Okay. He faced civil justice, which he just has to pay out of his pocket. And this is what he does anyway. Whenever something happens, they pay it under the table or they just pay it for the, you know what? I saw Tristan Tate and Andrew Tate say something to the effect where uh, paying your speeding ticket is just for the poor or something like that. Basically, he's like, well, what does that mean? Like you're just punishing me because you're really punishing poor people. So in other words, it's just nothing but just money exchanges for these people, right? Something bad happens, you dodge it, you go and pay for it, and that's the end of it. But either way, I think Conor McGregor dodged this one, but you never know what's going to happen in the future. But you also got to take into consideration what does this mean for his fighting career? Again, like I said, that fire that he had during the Diaz fight, the rematch, I think the best camp that Conor McGregor has ever done. Because you got to take into consideration, he was the hottest star of the UFC at the time, and then he's coming off of his first loss. So now he's got a lot to prove. And with that, trying to prove something, he trained a lot harder. He was a lot more focused, and he didn't have these distractions that he has going on right now. And I think ultimately that is the biggest problem that he has going on right now are these distractions. Okay, because it was only when he was 34 that he came back and fought Dustin Poirier. Now he's on the verge of being 35, 36, now 37, returning into the octagon. And how is that going to look? In all honesty, I don't think it's really going to look that good. It's not going to look great for him, even if he was to mount a comeback. Now, is Conor McGregor capable of sustaining a training camp, getting a few strings of good workouts and good sessions and things of that nature? He absolutely is. He's absolutely capable of that. The problem with that is how is he going to perform in the ring? Because all of these mental damages, all of these constant cocaine binges, and all of these constant bad habits that he's formed outside of the cage, I think is going to leave him as a shell of his old self. And he's never going to return to that old glory that he once did. It's just not looking good. And let me tell you, inactivity is the biggest enemy for a seasoned championship fighter. And you want to know what's crazy about that? You want to know what's crazy about that? The fact that it is an enemy for seasoned fighters. It was also his friend when he was an active fighter. In other words, he was only winning because he was active. Think about it. He goes from Nate Diaz, March, Nate Diaz, summertime, Eddie Alvarez in November. Now he's primed and ready to go from that point on. Right? So this is a different animal that we're dealing with Conor McGregor right now. This is a shell of his old self. And quite frankly, that is what we have to really accept with this whole entire reality of Conor McGregor right now. So again, remember this. This is not the worst thing in the world, but it's not the best, nor is it the most ideal situation either. So that is all that I have for this one. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And by the way, continue on watching because we're going on to a next story right now. Netflix sued over Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson fight streaming issues. So I'm going to make this a double story right now. We go from the Conor McGregor story. Now we go to the Netflix sued over Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson streaming fight issues. So, the briefing of this, okay? Netflix has been sued over its streaming issues during the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight. Class action lawsuit says Netflix failed to deliver services during the fight. A Florida man has filed class action lawsuit against Netflix after he had trouble streaming the fight. Okay, so Ronald Blue Denton filed a breach of contract lawsuit in Hillsborough County Monday. 60 million Americans were hyped to see Iron Mike versus Jake Paul. What they saw was the baddest stream on the planet, reads the lawsuit. Wow. So the baddest man on the planet you wanted to see, instead, you got the baddest stream on the planet. Den claims that Netflix viewers missed a large portion of the fight or the entire thing due to streaming issues. Yeah, I've heard reports on that. That is definitely true. Netflix customers experience massive streaming issues and should have known better because it happened before. They were woefully ill prepared, reads the lawsuit. The suit is seeking more than 50 million, says Netflix failed to deliver on the service. Wow. So Netflix says at its peak time, more than 65 million were tuned in at the same time. Netflix sporting events. The fight is just one of the several live sporting events coming to Netflix. NFL, Christmas. It will debut Kansas City Chiefs versus the Steelers and Baltimore Ravens versus the Houston Texas. Monday Night Raw will debut on January 6th. Oh, what an interesting date. So that is what we have for Jake Paul and Mike Tyson in the current moment of time right now. There is a lawsuit pending on that particular matter. How is that going to come about? What are they going to do? Are they going to win? You know what? It took one man to get in there and say, you know what? I want to file a lawsuit on this particular matter. I was not happy with the service. And as a result, we're going to see if he wins. And if he does, how many people will follow suit. So obviously with that fight, as you guys remember, millions of people sort of canceled their subscription. But you got to understand this from that perspective, right? I understand the protest behind this particular matter. I understand what you have to do when you have principles on a certain matter and this particular company is not delivering on the product that they said they were going to deliver on. I've seen this in airlines where people take moral stance and say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to take this airline anymore. I remember there was this one airline, I'm not going to mention their names, but it was an Asian doctor that was dragged out. And as a result, there were people that protested and said, well, I'm never going to fly with that airline anymore. And I thought this was a little bit virtue signaling like, because it's like, okay, do you really think that you're going to affect that airline, whereas many people are going to find maybe the convenience or the service or maybe the price or maybe the quality or the quantity that they may have to offer, all of these things that factor in, right? Your whole moral high ground is never going to affect a major company, not Netflix, not a major airline company whatsoever, but people are going to do what they're going to do. And that's that. You remember when people said they were going to cancel Gucci or this and that, people still went out and bought Gucci. That's just the reality of this situation. But nonetheless, for those that got to see the fight in its entirety with no problems, it was an awesome fight. And I urge you guys to take a look at my video on this particular matter where I titled it Jake Paul Showed Mercy. And I think that was the overall thesis of the fight. And it was a great night of fights. Obviously, the John Jones fight followed up as well. I think that particular fight is going to create a lot of different controversies and different possible matchups that we're going to look at in the future. We all thought Stipe was going to have a chance. It was just a fantasy. That was a reality of the situation. And John Jones basically finished a heavyweight. Maybe not a top level heavyweight, but a heavyweight that has a name and resume behind him. And now all options are open. There is the aspect of John Jones ducking. We'll see if that's what it is or if this is just a negotiation ploy. But either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this content. We got to talk about Netflix and the situation they got going on. We got to talk about the breaking news of Conor McGregor being found guilty of this civil case, which I stress highly enough that this is nothing more than a civil case, not a criminal case. However, is it really indicative of many accusations that we've had of McGregor before? I'm going to say yes, but at the same time, he still dodged the bullet on this one. By the end of the day, it's just another payday for somebody else. And by the end of the day, it's just another payoff for Conor McGregor to try and steer himself out of trouble once again, but really, realistically, facing even more troubles in his life with his career in the octagon. So this is unfortunate, but this is the reality of this situation. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you guys in the next content, next live stream, inshallah.